After my family went bankrupt, I was taken in by my mother's best friend, the Smith family. Because of this, I became entangled with the two Smith brothers for 20 years. Their pursuit and favoritism towards me made everyone envious. But when I wanted to marry and have children, both rejected me. The elder brother said, "Business comes first. I have no interest in marriage." The younger brother said, "I'm still young. I want to have fun for a few more years. Besides, a casual relationship can't be taken seriously." The next day, both brothers proposed to the nanny's daughter at my birthday party. To make her happy, they forced me, with my stomach problems, to drink high-concentration liquor. When I was rushed to the hospital with a bleeding stomach, they covered her eyes and mocked me for pretending. Heartbroken, on the day I was discharged, I called my mother. "I'm willing to marry the Miller family's heir." Friendly reminder. The main content is starting now. Just out of the hospital, my body hadn't yet adjusted to the biting autumn cold. Elder brother Jason called, his tone accusatory. "Jane, where have you run off to? Do you think running away will absolve you of your responsibilities? Come back and apologize to Alma." Younger brother Alan's voice followed. "You're the reason Alma's upset. Pretending to be sick and making her worry. She hasn't had an appetite for days because of you." I looked at my reflection in the glass. Emaciated and frail, I appeared as if a gust of wind could carry me away. I've had a weak stomach since childhood, often sickly. Over the years, the two brothers had cared for me a great deal. I remember one night when I fell ill. Jason carried me up 20 flights of stairs. Alan scoured the entire city to buy my favorite dessert to cheer me up. From then on, they meticulously managed my diet and health, personally overseeing everything. But after Alma appeared, they tossed all those memories aside. I silently hung up the phone and dialed my mother's number. "Mom, I've thought it over. I'm willing to marry the Miller family's heir." Mom paused. "Daughter, this is a lifelong decision. Have you really thought it through?" Back when my father passed away and the family went bankrupt, Mom sent me to City A and single-handedly supported our crumbling family. She took 20 years to establish a connection with the Miller family, securing an opportunity for our family to rise again. Yet, more than the family's prosperity, she cared about my happiness. Even though the Miller family favored me as a daughter-in-law, she left the choice to me. I once thought true affection was rare and hoped to choose between the two Smith brothers. Now I understand I was merely their pastime during moments of boredom. I should have known to leave long ago. I opened my phone to book a ticket but saw Alma's latest social media post. True love needs no words. Only useless old women would scheme to climb higher. She shamelessly flaunted the 2 different diamond rings on her fingers. She was lying in my room, wearing the haute couture outfit and crystal shoes the Smith brothers had custom made for my birthday 6 months ago. Silently, I blocked Alma. "Mom, I'm serious. I want my own child soon." During my hospitalization, the doctor told me that this incident had caused severe damage to my body. If I don't conceive while I'm still young, I might never have children of my own. I don't have time to wait any longer. "All right, Mom respects your decision," she said. "The Miller family has checked the astrological compatibility, and next Sunday is an auspicious day to get the marriage certificate. If you return, I will arrange everything for you." Mom likely already understood my situation. Before hanging up, she added, "Remember to say a proper goodbye to Mrs. Smith." I looked up at the gray, overcast sky. The doctor said it would take about a week to recover post-surgery. I would use this week to say goodbye to everything and everyone. I took a cab back to the villa. As soon as I walked through the door, I was drenched with cold water. "Jane, sorry, I was watering the flowers and didn't see you," Alma said, holding the hose. She didn't stop until I was soaked to the bone. Struggling to open my eyes, I saw that the lily of the valley I'd painstakingly cared for over the years had been uprooted. In its place were large, dazzling roses. The cold wind made me uncomfortable, especially after just having surgery. I felt dizzy and nearly fainted. But Jason and Alan exchanged glances and looked at me with disdain, as if mocking me for putting on a show as soon as I returned. "Jane, I thought you were tough enough to never come back," Alan sneered. "Her own mother doesn't want her. Where else could she go?" A sharp pain pierced my heart. I suddenly recalled the day I first arrived at the Smith house. Alan held my hand, trying his best to cheer me up, saying, "Jane, don't be afraid. This is your home now." Jason had cleared out the largest, nicest room in the old house for me. Later, when the 3 of us moved into this villa for work reasons, Jason meticulously decorated the master bedroom according to my preferences and announced to everyone that I was the irreplaceable mistress of the villa. Until that day, Alma, using the excuse of helping Mrs. Smith, came to the villa. She spent her days either clinging to the 2 brothers or accidentally breaking my things. At first, I sympathized with her struggles and didn't make a fuss, but she kept pushing my limits, eventually breaking a keepsake my father had left me right in front of me. I couldn't hold back any longer and confronted her, but Jason pushed me away, frowning. Alma's life is hard enough. Why do you, a pampered princess, have to make things difficult for an inexperienced girl? Alan added. Alma is younger than I am. Can't you, at your age, show her some tolerance? Holding the broken jade pendant, I felt lost and helpless for the first time. From that moment on, everything changed. I was no longer the most important person in the brothers' hearts. The nanny's daughter gradually replaced me, becoming the new mistress of the villa and forcing me to leave sooner. With nothing left to hold on to, I just wanted to pack up and leave as soon as possible. When I walked inside, I saw my belongings haphazardly piled in the hallway. Jason, with his arm around Alma, looked down at me. Jane, know your place. You're just a parasite clinging to the Smith family. You have no right to look down on Alma or throw tantrums at her, he continued. From now on, you'll move into the maid's room. Alma will take over your duties at the company, and you'll be reassigned to menial tasks in the back office until you learn your place. Alan tore apart the teddy bear my mother had left me to amuse Alma. Jane, if you upset Alma again, I won't let you off easily. If I had heard those words before, I would have been heartbroken and sleepless. But now that I'm leaving, there's no time for grudges. I calmly said, you're right. I'll move out soon. And there's no need to reassign me. I resign. Jason sneered. You really plan to freeload off the Smith family as a worthless parasite? Fine. For our mother's sake, I'll let this slide. But remember to know your place in the future. I walked past Jason and said quietly, there won't be a future. This place indeed held many beautiful memories, but it was never truly my home. I thought it would take a long time to pack my things, but upon closer inspection, there wasn't much left. Most of my clothes were chosen by Jason. Back then, he would say, our Jane is the most beautiful princess, so she must dress beautifully every day. Now, those clothes were soaked in dirty water, emitting an unknown stench. I had gone from being his princess to a parasite with a princess complex. Moving the clothes aside, I saw photos scattered all over the floor. Alan used to love taking pictures of me, saying he wanted to capture all my moments. In every group photo, the two brothers would compete to stand closer to me. Now, in the photos of the three of us, my face was crossed out with a red pen. I couldn't bear to look any longer and threw everything into the trash. Jason and Alma came downstairs just in time to see this. A flash of shock crossed his eyes, as I had once treasured all these things. But he quickly sneered. You sure know how to waste the Smith family's money. The Jason who once spared no expense to make me happy now saw everything I did as wrong because of Alma. I had lost the right to be willful and had no desire to argue. I simply said, I'll pay it back. The Smith family doesn't care about the money, but remember, you must never trouble Alma again. Alma tugged at Jason's sleeve, pouting. Don't waste time on unnecessary people. I want to go to the secret base to watch the stars. Let's go. I paused, stopping in my tracks. The secret base Alma mentioned was something Jason had created for me when I first came to the Smith family. Mrs. Smith was busy with work, so she entrusted my care to Jason, who was 6 years older than me. Jason gave me the best of everything in the world. He said I was the most beautiful girl in his heart and personally designed an eternal starry sky for me. That night, under the stars, he looked at me with deep affection. Jane, remember, this is your starry sky, and it is your love. We spent 20 years perfecting this starry sky, creating a dreamlike secret base. Since then, my heart had leaned towards Jason. But every time I was about to make a choice, Alan would jump in and cause a scene, leaving things unresolved. As for now, they had a new red rose and had long forgotten about me, the dim moon. But it didn't matter. I took a deep breath and walked away. I didn't want either of them anymore. But Alma suddenly grabbed my wrist, leaving scratch marks on my arm with her nails. Jane, why won't you let me finish? Do you despise me? I winced in pain and forcefully shook off Alma's hand. She fell backward, crying out, Brother, save me. Jason, alarmed, quickly scooped Alma into his arms. Before I could react, he slapped me across the face. Alan, who had rushed over upon hearing the commotion, yelled at me, Jane, why are you always against Alma? Don't forget, if the Smith family hadn't taken you in, you'd be a nobody, maybe even scavenging for trash. Not only are you ungrateful, but you also repay kindness with enmity. A buzzing sound filled my ears. This was the first time I had ever been hit. It felt like my entire world shattered in that moment. Jason stared at me, seemingly realizing his mistake. Are you okay? It's fine. I don't blame you, I said, wiping the blood from the corner of my mouth. I didn't blame him. I considered this slap as repayment for the life-saving favor from years ago. From now on, we were even, with no debts owed. But Alan wouldn't let it go and blocked my way. "Don't leave yet. Apologize to Alma." His fierce gaze was a stark contrast to the way he used to follow me around. I knew his methods. Back in school, when a boy harassed me, Alan took matters into his own hands, and Jason cleaned up the mess. The brothers worked seamlessly together, forcing the boy's family to leave the city. I never imagined that one day they would use such ruthless tactics against me. I glanced at Alma, who looked smug, and suppressed the myriad thoughts swirling in my mind. I will never apologize. I did nothing wrong. I had nothing to fear. I would leave on my own, without them having to lift a finger. Alan was still furious, but Jason, feeling guilty, stopped him. "Enough. I acted impulsively just now. Don't take it to heart. I'll bring you your favorite chestnut cake when I get back. But you have to promise me not to trouble Alma again." One slap. One chestnut cake. But he forgot. I have stomach problems and can't eat chestnut cake. Jason had once gone through countless chefs unsatisfied with their work to create a special medicinal diet plan for me, staying up late researching. Alan used to meticulously supervise my diet every day. Now, they had forgotten all of that. A gust of wind blew, chilling me to the bone. I shivered, realizing I was still in my wet clothes. I was likely coming down with a fever. Just then, Alan walked past me and bumped into me, saying, still pretending, unable to stand any longer. I collapsed into the mud. Jason turned back, a flash of conflict in his eyes. But in the end, he and Alan walked away with Alma, one on each side, protecting her. After struggling for a long time, I managed to crawl out and called an ambulance for myself. The doctor, upon seeing my state, angrily scolded me. "You just got out of the hospital, and you're already in this condition? Don't you know your own body's limits? Do you have a death wish?" I didn't argue and obediently stayed in the hospital for a few days for observation. Only after my fever completely subsided did the doctor release me. Having lost so much time, I hurried to proceed with my plans. I returned to the company to handle my resignation and say goodbye to former colleagues. But I found out that Alma had fired them all. The remaining employees ignored me. I was left waiting in the company lobby for half a day, only to be told that Jason had taken Alma on a business trip. They had gone to my favorite beach from childhood and also visited places I had always wanted to go but never had the chance. With a bitter smile, I threw away my resignation letter. I had been worrying about how to explain my departure, only to realize no one cared about my presence. Now, I just needed to say goodbye to Mrs. Smith before leaving without any attachments. Mrs. Smith knew I was coming and had even canceled an international meeting for me. As soon as she saw me, her eyes reddened. "You've lost weight again. I heard about your marriage to the Miller family. My dear, I really don't want you to go." I handed her the bank card my mother had given me. "I'll come visit you. Thank you for taking care of me all these years." Tears fell from Mrs. Smith's eyes. "You're distancing yourself from me. It's my fault for being too busy with work and not taking good care of you. I foolishly hoped you could be my daughter-in-law, but they don't deserve you. Consider this money as part of your dowry. I can't attend your wedding, but I truly hope you find happiness." I held back my tears and hugged Mrs. Smith. Over the years, she had treated me like her own daughter. But when it comes to matters of the heart, who can control them? Mrs. Smith held my hand, repeatedly giving me advice, reluctant to let go. Halfway through our conversation, Jason and the others returned. Seeing me, the brothers' faces darkened. "What marriage, Jane? What nonsense are you telling my mom now?" Jason snapped. "Jason, how can you talk to your sister like that?" Alan quickly moved to Mrs. Smith's side. "Mom, don't listen to Jane's exaggerations. My brother and I proposed to Alma just to fulfill one of her wishes." Alma hid behind Jason, looking shy. Jason calmly explained, "Although Alma comes from a poor background, she's an independent and strong girl. She wouldn't agree to marry just for the Smith family's wealth. Jane has been spoiled by me and only knows how to bully others and compete for attention." Mrs. Smith, who had been confused, angrily threw her cup. "No wonder Jane insists on leaving. You two beasts. Take this woman and get out." After they left, I spent a long time comforting Mrs. Smith until her anger subsided. She felt too embarrassed to ask me to stay any longer and tearfully wished me a safe journey. I left with this small kindness, my mind filled with thoughts. As I was stepping down the stairs, I suddenly tripped and fell. Enduring the pain, I looked up to see that it was Alan who had tripped me. "Jane, why won't you let me go? You even ran to Mrs. Smith to slander me. Do you want me dead?" Jason's face was terrifyingly dark. Alan dragged me in front of Alma. "Jane, apologize. I couldn't believe that even as I was about to leave, they still wouldn't let me go. I couldn't hold back any longer and shouted, "I did nothing wrong." As soon as I finished speaking, Alan stomped on my injured ankle. The intense pain made me feel like my bones were about to shatter. "Jane, remember this. This is the price for hurting Alma. I won't pamper you like my brother does." Curled up on the ground, the pain made my consciousness fade. Only one thought remained in my mind. No more debts. 20 years of feelings. All settled. A passerby took me to the hospital. After confirming that there were no serious issues with my bones, I dragged my swollen ankle and boarded the plane without looking back. The next day, the news of the Miller heirs' flash marriage shot to the top of trending topics. Messages from the two Smith brothers quickly followed. "Alan, running away from home again? Fine. I forgive you. Get back here." "Jason, Jane. Where are you? Why is the Miller heir's wife named after you?" I looked at the red marriage certificate in my hand and immediately blocked their numbers. Then I lay on the sofa and posted a photo of my marriage certificate with William on my social media. My mother, concerned, placed an ice pack on my swollen ankle. "How did you let yourself get like this? We had to postpone the wedding, but thank goodness Madam Miller likes you. Otherwise, I couldn't tell my mother what happened at the Smiths." Being dependent on others wasn't the hard part. The hard part was the fall from paradise to hell. Leaning against my mother's embrace, I forced a smile. "It'll be fine. Wounds will heal eventually. Past events will fade away someday. It's better to let go of all those grievances and focus on welcoming a new life." My mother had the family doctor check my ankle. After confirming there were no serious issues, she took me to meet Madam Miller. The Miller family, a century-old establishment with deep roots. My mother's advice echoed in my mind as we made our way there. My heart pounded, but seeing Madam Miller instantly calmed me. Madam Miller, with her silver hair and kind eyes, greeted me warmly. "My dear granddaughter-in-law, finally, we meet. 4 years. I've been telling your mother to bring you here so I could see you more often. She kept you like a treasure, unwilling to let go." I smiled politely. "I've been unwell since childhood and had to stay in City A for treatment." "No worries. Let William take good care of you. He's been meditating at a temple recently, but he'll make amends after the wedding." To be honest, I had yet to meet my supposed husband. On the day we registered our marriage, he didn't even show up, only sending his assistant to take my documents. In less than half an hour, the marriage certificate was handed to me. Seeing me lost in thought, Madam Miller thought I felt wronged. She immediately had someone bring out a family heirloom jade bracelet and placed it on my wrist. "Madam Miller, this is too precious. Call me Grandma. And besides, you are now the mistress of the Miller family. The entire Miller family is yours. What's a jade bracelet in comparison?" Her familiar words made me feel a sense of déjà vu. The Smith brothers had said the same thing to me years ago. In their youth, they had stolen Mrs. Smith's jewelry to give me as a token of their affection. Mrs. Smith found out but wasn't angry with me. Like Madam Miller, she gently put the bracelet on my wrist. "Take something from my family, and you'll be my daughter-in-law." Unfortunately, that bracelet was later broken by Alma. The three of us, once so close, gradually drifted apart. Remembering this, my eyes welled up, and I almost cried. Madam Miller immediately became anxious. "Don't cry, my dear. I knew from the moment I saw you that you were blessed and had a prosperous future. I promise you'll never be wronged in the Miller family." Everyone in the Miller family showed me respect and affection. Even though we were already married, they didn't ask me to stay to learn the family rules. Instead, they allowed me to stay at home and gradually build a relationship with William after the wedding. "The wedding room is ready, but we elders won't interfere with your young couple's matters. Just remember, if that boy ever bullies you, come back and tell me." "Thank you, Grandma." After leaving the Miller family, the wedding preparations began in earnest. The Millers were busy organizing everything, and my mother was constantly occupied with arranging my dowry. I thought leaving the Smiths suddenly might make me feel unsettled or nostalgic for a while, but between trying on wedding dresses and picking out rings, I was so busy I had no time to think about anything else. Gradually, I began to forget the past, until one day, while I was trying on a wedding dress at the bridal shop, I received a call from Mrs. Smith. "Jane, Jason and Alan heard about your wedding and insisted on coming to see you. I couldn't stop those rascals, so they should be there soon. Just focus on what you're doing and don't worry about them." Hearing those familiar names, I paused. Before I could hang up, I saw the reflections of the Smith brothers in the mirror. They stared at me, their eyes filled with emotions I couldn't decipher: shock, amazement, regret, and remorse. "Jane, are you really getting married?" Jason's voice trembled slightly. It reminded me of many years ago when he first confessed his feelings to me. Also with a trembling voice, "Jane, My greatest wish in life is to marry you, but don't feel pressured. I'll work hard to make you understand my heart. No matter how long it takes, I'm willing to wait for you. But over the years, we never truly understood each other's hearts. Alan, being younger, spoke more bluntly. Jane, stop pretending. I don't believe you would marry someone else. Look at you. A sickly person from a fallen family. How could the Miller family accept you? You're just using another method to get our attention. I'm not falling for it. He said this, but his eyes were red. I suddenly remembered when we were children, playing house together. I would wear Mrs. Smith's white dress and pretend to be the bride, and the two brothers would compete to be the groom. Alan couldn't win against Jason and would cry with red eyes. It seems nothing has changed. And yet everything has changed. I lowered my head, adjusting my dress, avoiding their gaze. You should leave. For Mrs. Smith's sake, I won't have my bodyguards throw you out. Jason looked at me in shock, as if deeply hurt. Jane, stop fooling around. Marriage is not a joke. Have you really thought it through? We've spent 20 years together, and you never agreed to marry me. Why marry a stranger? I calmly explained. I'm not impulsive. Every choice I've made has been carefully considered. I'm getting older. If I don't marry soon, I may never have children. They thought they had waited 20 years for me, but hadn't I been waiting for them as well? 4 years. I was convinced I was inseparable from the Smith brothers. I thought I would marry one of them, uniting our families. But now I understand there's no true emotion worth cherishing or remembering. Jason looked hurt. But why? Why marry William? If you wanted to get married, you could have asked me. I looked at myself in the mirror. The white wedding dress adorned with dazzling diamonds was exactly like the scene I had imagined as a child. I smiled at the two brothers, because only he made a firm choice for me. Many years ago, Madam Miller hinted at wanting an alliance through marriage. At that time, I was reluctant to leave the Smith brothers, fantasizing about marrying for love, so I didn't agree. During this period, William certainly had better choices, but he chose to wait steadfastly. I don't know why. Maybe it was for Madam Miller's sake, perhaps a business consideration, or maybe our fates were aligned. Regardless of the true reason, he was indeed the only one who consistently chose me from the beginning. Alan sneered. So, it's just about jealousy over Alma. Jane, is it necessary? We've known each other for 20 years. Alma can't replace you. You'll always have a place in the Smith family. Jason pondered for a moment, then suddenly grabbed my hand. Don't ruin your life over a moment of anger. Come back with me. I'll explain things to the Miller family. Before he could finish, Jason was kicked aside. I hadn't even processed what happened before I was pulled into an embrace. A soothing scent wafted over me, calming my previously tense heart. Looking up, I saw William, whose features were even more refined than in the marriage certificate photo. The mistress of the Miller family doesn't need your leftovers, William said, holding my hand firmly and shielding me. The warmth from his hand seemed to infuse me with new strength. I tightened my grip on his hand and looked at the Smith brothers. Did you hear that? I have my own family, my own life. I won't revolve around you, nor will I wait for your scraps. And I'm not acting out of spite. I genuinely want to spend my life with him. In the past, I had also stubbornly questioned why others got ahead. Now, I understand. Someone who truly loves you won't make you wait. A story spanning 20 years, destined to end with regret. They could discard 2 decades of memories for someone they barely knew. Why should I cling to the past? Hearing my words, William smiled and took my hand, slipping a diamond ring the size of a pigeon egg onto my finger. This ring was larger than the 2 rings the Smith brothers had given Alma combined. Its brilliance showcased the Miller family's distinguished status and deeply stung the Smith brothers. Alan angrily said, Jane, are you really going to abandon 20 years of feelings for the Miller family's power and status? I never thought you were so vain. I couldn't help but laugh. Once, I didn't seek wealth and glory, only a bit of genuine affection. What did I get in return? Jason's merciless slap and Alan's near-breaking kick. They didn't know my family had risen again, that my mother had repaid every penny the Smith family spent on me, and that we no longer owed each other anything. Since Alma's arrival, all their attention had been on her, still thinking I was the helpless orphan with no one to rely on. With William present, I no longer needed to hold back. I ordered the bodyguards to drag the Smith brothers away. Alan struggled but was no match for the strong bodyguards. Seeing he couldn't break free, he resorted to cursing. Jane, I don't believe you can be so heartless. You must still have feelings for me. William, as the heir of the Miller family, how can you marry such an impure woman? I don't believe you'll have a good life together. Jason remained relatively calm, silently watching me with a complex expression. He only said, Jane, you'll regret this. After they were dragged away, the surroundings fell silent. William suddenly turned to me. Jane, Will you regret this? If you will, we can postpone the wedding. I looked at him quietly. Years of meditation had given him a serene and compassionate aura, much like Madame Miller. Compared to the hypocritical and selfish Smith brothers, William was truly a refined gentleman. No wonder my mother had always urged me to accept this marriage. I reached out to touch William's delicate features and stood on tiptoe to kiss his lips. I don't want to say I regret meeting you too late because I don't regret any of my decisions. But now, I can't wait to have a child with you. William's body stiffened for a moment, but he quickly embraced me, deepening the kiss. It turns out that true love doesn't need 20 years of waiting. Even a fleeting romance can be genuine when the right person comes along. Marriage and children will follow naturally, without waiting. The Miller family initially wanted to hold the Smith family accountable for the incident at the bridal shop, but my mother, considering Mrs. Smith, intervened. She made sure the Miller brothers were on guard and wouldn't appear before me again. My life returned to its usual calm, and the wedding preparations continued as planned. Unexpectedly, we hadn't accounted for Alma. Somehow, she found us and suddenly rushed out, kneeling before me as William and I were returning home from our wedding photo shoot. Jane, I was wrong. Please have mercy on me. I shouldn't have foolishly competed with you or disrupted your relationship with the brothers. From Alma's tearful pleas, I learned that after I left, the Smith brothers' treatment of her worsened. Mrs. Smith discovered Alma had been selling off family property and, in a fit of rage, took her to court. The Smith brothers, who had always sided with Alma, didn't say a word in her defense. Alma lost everything and nearly ended up in jail. Please, help me. Your words are the only ones they'll listen to, she begged, trying to grab my leg. Before she could touch me, the bodyguards dragged her away. William remained silent, looking at her as if she were trash. He simply held my hand and said, "Let's go home." All right. To me, everything related to the Smith brothers wasn't worth my effort. But as we walked away, I suddenly felt dizzy, and my vision went black as I collapsed into William's arms. When I woke up, I was in the Miller family's old mansion. Almost everyone from the Miller family was there. Madame Miller was beaming with joy. Double happiness, double happiness. I knew you were blessed. And now you're pregnant so soon. We can't wait a single day for the wedding. Quickly, transfer my 2 gold mines to my granddaughter-in-law's name to ensure a smooth pregnancy. I looked at William's gentle eyes, still a bit confused. I touched my stomach and realized a new life was growing inside me. My life was finally complete. Our wedding was held amidst laughter and joy. The Miller family invited prominent figures from all walks of life and spent a fortune to host a grand wedding for me. In the dressing room, my mother alternated between smiling with relief and crying with concern. Mrs. Smith asked me to apologize on her behalf. She realized some things too late. It's okay. It's all in the past. Those painful memories were now behind us. We had finally found happiness after all the hardships. My mother nodded, placed the veil on my head, and held my hand as we walked towards the wedding venue. Halfway there, I saw the Smith brothers being blocked by bodyguards. They were fighting with the guards, refusing to leave despite being beaten black and blue. When they saw me, their dull eyes suddenly lit up. Jane, you can't marry him. We know we were wrong. Alma is the one who truly coveted the Smith family's wealth. After 20 years of growing up together, they only realized my worth after I left. How absurd and laughable. I didn't respond. Jason, who always prided himself on his composure, broke down in tears before me. Jane, have you forgotten our past? Of course, you left so decisively, without taking a single piece of clothing or a photo. The lily of the valley in the villa is gone. And so is everything about you. 20 years, and you left nothing but memories. I had tended to the lily of the valley in the villa for years, and it was just about to bloom. But it fell short. The wedding music started, drowning out Jason's cries. My mother signaled the bodyguards to drag them away. Alan, however, found some strength and rushed over. He knelt before me, holding a stone, and smashed it against his leg. I gasped in shock, but he seemed unfazed, smiling at me. Jane, please don't be angry. I'll do anything if you forgive me. Looking at his bloodied leg, I sighed softly. Jason, Alan, you taught me that in front of someone who doesn't love you, all efforts are meaningless. I'm pregnant now. From now on, our family of 3 will live happily. So, I hope you never appear before me again. Even if you die, don't dirty my sight. I waved my hand, signaling the bodyguards to continue dragging them away. With determined steps, I walked towards William, who was waiting for me with a smile. Under the witness of the priest, we exchanged rings and recited our vows of love.